good evening to everyone present here. Thank you so much for joining our live today on the awareness session on glaucoma. So today we have with us one of the most eminent and great personalities in the field of ophthalmology, Honorable Dr. Vanaja Vaidyanathan, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
So, ma'am, to have a short intro about ma'am, Dr. Vanaja is the founder, medical director, consultant, and chief ophthalmic surgeon in Jyoti Eye Care Center, Puducherry. So, she has completed her MBBS and DO from MMC with gold medal in ophthalmology. Ma'am has many accolades, like she is the fellow of All India Collegium of Ophthalmology. Madam is also an active Rotarian. So, in fact, she is the first woman assistant governor of Rotary District 2981, and ma'am has also won the award for the best assistant governor. In community service, she has received many awards and recognitions. To name a few out of 100 plus awards she has received, so ma'am has received Women Empowerment Award by the National Indian Medical Association. Ma'am is also won awards like International Women Achievers Award from the Legal Rights Council. She has also received Puduvai Shakti Award. These are just few awards from many she has received. So we are truly lucky to have such a pioneer in this field and an established doctor from the field of ophthalmology to interact with us this evening. So it brings us immense pleasure to have you as a chief guest for this evening, ma'am. So thank you wholeheartedly for sparing your valuable time this evening to address us about glaucoma, ma'am. So thank you so much for accepting our request and joining today with us.
My pleasure, Karthik. Is that Karthik?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Pavan, who invited me to this meeting. Uh, and I feel greatly honored to be talking to you today. I see at least 40, nearly 40 uh, doctors, undergraduate students, and I think students from other fields as well, not just MBBS. I also see some other graduations in the identity there. So, good evening to all.
Good evening, ma'am. So
Yes.
more people will join now, ma'am. They're all
Yeah.
joining. So
Yeah.
ma'am,
Sure.
begin today's session, ma'am, with a brief introduction on human eye. So could you please explain us about basic anatomy of the eye, ma'am?
Yes. As you all know, eye is an important sense organ. Eyes are the light of our life. We can call them the windows which help us to see the wonderful world, the mirrors of our mind. The eyes are described in several ways by many people, but most important point we have to remember is that eyes are the light of the life. They, as you all know, the eyes are just 1 inch diameter sense organs. They are just 1 inch in diameter, two balls kept in the two orbits, the hollow portion of the skull, and the two eyeballs face straight. Though there are two eyeballs, we see one image, and it's a three-dimensional image. Only if two eyes see, we get the three-dimensional image. If there is a problem in one eye and person sees with one eye, it is not three-dimensional anymore. It is just two-dimensional. The depth of focus and the other features of 3D, the stereopsis, fusion, all that are absent, and it becomes very difficult for the person to have depth perception. So coming to anatomy of the eyeball has got two segments, the anterior segment and the bigger posterior segment. The anterior segment itself is divided by the lens and the iris diaphragm into an anterior chamber and a thin posterior chamber, behind which we have the vitreous. The posterior chamber has got the ciliary body all round. This posterior chamber releases the ciliary body, secretes the aqueous fluid, which actually goes and it nourishes with nutrients, oxygen, etc. to the iris diaphragm, the lens, and other structures, and then the fluid goes into the anterior chamber via the pupil, and in the anterior chamber between the cornea, which is the transparent front portion, and the iris diaphragm, we have in the front anterior chamber, all 360 degrees, an angle which is called the angle of the eye, and the angle of the eye is where you see fine pores and the drainage of the aqueous fluid out into the circulation, back into the circulation happens through this angle. So the secretion of the fluid from the posterior chamber into the anterior chamber and drainage via anterior chamber, like a sink. You have how from the tap you have the water flowing, and then you have the drainage which drains away the water. You have the aqueous fluid flowing from the posterior chamber, flowing into the anterior chamber, and via the angle and the pores, the fluid flows out. So this happens all the time, 24 hours, 365 days, all our life. And if there is some interruption somewhere, there's going to be a problem. So we'll talk more about that. But when we talk about anatomy, there are three very important structures. The front transparent cornea, which is a very important part, VIP of the eye, we call it. Then you have the iris diaphragm with the pupil in the center, and the lens, which is going to refract, or it is going to focus the light rays which come from outside via the rays come through the cornea into the anterior chamber, the pupil, and they get focused onto the retina, which is VVIP of the eye, because at least cornea, if it is injured or damaged, we can replace the cornea by corneal transplantation. If the lens gets injured or if it becomes cataractous, we have replacement with artificial lenses available in the market. But if the retina, which is behind, it is the posterior most part of the eye, and this retina, if it gets damaged, it's going to, the retina and the optic nerve, both together are very, very important. So any damage to the retina or optic nerve, it is irreversible. So we'll have to take care of the retina, especially in diabetic retinopathy. We have damage happening to the retina, and when it goes beyond a certain stage, it is irreversible. Likewise, optic nerve is damaged. The optic nerve head is damaged in glaucoma, and it is irreversible. Once the damage is beyond a certain limit, it becomes very difficult to get back what is gone. So anatomy, when we talk, there are so many structures in the eye that we have to understand, but most importantly in today's context, today we are going to talk mostly about glaucoma, and World Glaucoma Week is it's in the second week of March, and glaucoma is the second leading cause of blindness in the world, next to cataract in adult population. And with reference to glaucoma, these are the most important anatomical structures.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for briefing us about eye, ma'am. Thank you. So, ma'am, moving on to the next question, as you said about glaucoma, ma'am. So, wherever we go, this is March, it's about glaucoma week. So, wherever we go, we see many flyers, many posters in radios. Everywhere we go, we heard this term glaucoma, ma'am. So, glaucoma testing, glaucoma awareness. So, ma'am, could you explain to us what is glaucoma, ma'am, about this?
Yeah, glaucoma is a group of diseases. So it's not just one disease. There are many types of glaucoma. So that's why we say it's a group of diseases where the end result is optic neuropathy, optic nerve damage. So the end result is going to be optic nerve damage and field loss, visual field loss. So the field loss also will have a specific pattern. It will start with peripheral field loss, and slowly the field loss is going to intrude into the central portions and cause tubular vision, and the end stage is going to be blindness. The most important risk factor is raised intraocular pressure. Most of the glaucoma patients have raised intraocular pressure, but there is a small group of patients who need not have raised pressure. They may have a normal pressure or even low pressure, and they still have optic nerve damage and the field loss. And these people come under the category of normal tension glaucoma or low tension glaucoma. There is also another entity which we have to understand. The cornea, the front transparent portion, the cornea has got a thickness of say 520 microns. In patients having thinner corneas, say 450 microns, they are going to have falsely low measurements of intraocular pressure. So their measurements, supposing their pressure is measured as 18 and they have just 450 micron thickness, the adjusted pressure is actually going to be beyond 20 to 23, which is raised pressure. So the adjusted pressure is also very important when we measure intraocular pressure. So glaucoma is a triad of optic neuropathy, field damage, and raised intraocular pressure, where intraocular pressure can be need not be always raised. There can be it's an important risk factor, but there can be glaucomatous damage even without very high pressures. So this is I think an overview definition of glaucoma.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So the next question is, ma'am, so if a person is coming to us with some complaints, so what would be those complaints to say that the person is suffering from glaucoma? To put it in simple words, ma'am, so what are the signs and symptoms that a person can present to a doctor in case of glaucoma?
Okay, I think most of the audience here are medicos or medicos at least. So yes, I would like to make it very clear. Symptoms are what the patients perceive. Okay, what the patients come with, they are called symptoms, and signs are what we see. Okay, what we test and we pick up, they are the signs. So the difference is very important. When we talk about signs and symptoms of glaucoma, there are two, I already mentioned, there are types of glaucomas. The majority type, the open angle glaucoma and the narrow angle glaucoma. There are two major types. So when we talk about the majority of glaucoma patients, we generally refer the primary open angle glaucoma as the glaucoma patients. The other minority categories are not usually being mentioned as glaucoma patients. They are a separate variety. So the primary open angle glaucoma patients are the majority. 75% of glaucomas are primary open angle glaucomas. And the danger of this glaucoma is it's a silent thief of sight. It silently takes away the sight. Slowly the peripheral field gets damaged little by little, and patient does not even know that he is losing sight, he or she is losing sight. Slowly and slowly the patient will have the optic nerve getting damaged and the peripheral field lost, and end stage would be a tubular vision. It is only at this stage that patient says, when I drive, I'm not seeing the vehicles until they come very close by. I'm not seeing the vehicles coming on the side roads. Sometimes the patients may have headaches. Some other patients may have frequent increase of their reading powers. So their reading glasses will be changed very often. So these are the very few mild, subtle symptoms or complaints that the patients may have. But the signs are very important. When these patients come to the doctor, we pick up very easily, and even early glaucoma can get missed out by doctors. But as the glaucoma progresses, we can definitely pick up signs of glaucoma. For example, when we measure the pressure, it's going to be raised in many of the patients. Many of the patients, when we see the fundus, there is going to be increased optic nerve head cupping. We call it cup disc ratio. So the cup risk ratio increases. And then when we order for OCT, optical coherence tomography test, OCT will show damage, and field damage also can be picked up by Humphrey field analyzer or other computerized field testing methods. So these are the signs and symptoms of primary open angle glaucoma. There is yet another type, 20% of the patients, 20 to some, in some areas it can even be as high as 40-50% of glaucomas can be the narrow angle glaucoma, wherein it affects middle-aged women, and the eyes are usually very small in these patients and the angles are very narrow. And these patients can have crowding of the angles when they have a dilatation, when they are sitting in a dark room, when they are sitting in cinema theaters, or when they are watching TV in a dark room, they can have the pupils get dilated. In the mid dilated position, there is crowding of the angles and sudden block in the outflow passage. So this is angle closure attack, we call it. So when they have a sudden closure of the outflow passage, there is a raise in intraocular pressure all of a sudden. And at this stage, patients can have headache, eye pain, redness, vomiting, nausea, vomiting. They can even go get admitted in general side for vomiting, and then they can get referred to eye hospital for eye pressure. And then they can also have colored halos. Before attack also, they can have intermittent seeing of colored halos around lights. When they see light, they see colored halos, rainbow colors around the lights. Before, after attacks, they can see that because of corneal edema. So these are very dramatic. The angle closure glaucoma has got very dramatic symptoms. Patients may come with eye pain, redness, headache, vomiting, colored halos, all these. And when the doctor sees there's a mid-dilated fixed pupil, not acting or sluggishly acting, and corneal edema, drop in vision. So all these point towards angle closure attack, and immediate oral or IV anti-glaucoma medications have to be administered to bring down the pressure. Otherwise, there can be permanent loss of some field of vision, or even fully, there can be even total loss of vision if the attack is not nullified. So these are the signs and symptoms. So when we do gonioscopy in these narrow angle patients, they seem to have, we cannot actually do gonioscopy when there is a painful red eye. We have to bring down the pressure and then as early as possible do the gonioscopy. And when we find that the angles are closed or very narrow, we'll have to plan for a peripheral laser iridotomy, which can be curative, or at least it can take care of the angle closure attack. It can save the eye, save sight. Yes.
But ma'am, that was a very elaborate explanation.
Okay. Because signs, when you say symptoms and signs, all these comprise of symptoms and signs. Yeah. So I'll have to.
That was also very clear. You made it clear how to differentiate signs and symptoms, ma'am. That was very useful. Yeah. So yes, ma'am. The next question, ma'am, is: are there any risk factors for glaucoma, ma'am? Like, is there a specific health condition, or are there a specific set of population who are more prone to get this disease, ma'am?
Exactly. So the first risk factor is the age. So beyond, I already mentioned, people beyond the age of 40 years should have their routine eye checkup, should have pressure checked eye checkup. So routine examination only will help pick up glaucoma. So 40 and above is the age to have routine annual pressure checkup, but 50 or beyond 55, 60, the risk becomes even higher. So age is one risk factor. The second risk factor is for the open angle glaucoma, male members are at risk. Whereas for narrow angle glaucoma, it is the female, middle-aged females who are at risk with small eyes. Family history of glaucoma. So when a family member has glaucoma, all the family members need to have glaucoma workup done, because 30% of family members have a tendency to have glaucoma. And of course, ethnic factors are there. Some, for example, Asian eyes, Asian and Chinese eyes are more at risk of narrow angle glaucoma, whereas Caucasians, others are they have higher risk of primary open angle glaucoma. Another very high risk factor is myopia. So myopes are at very high risk of developing primary open angle glaucoma. Whereas hypermetropes, the hypermetropes have smaller eyes and they have higher risk of developing narrow angle glaucoma. So when we say risk factor, the family history and old age, people aged 40 and beyond, definitely they should go for checkup, eye pressure checkup, routine, complete, comprehensive eye checkup. So not just pressure, fundus examination, and also where indicated, other tests like OCT and fields are needed. Also, yet another risk factor I would say is when patients are using steroid drops, the secondary glaucomas. There's another type, the secondary glaucomas, where usage of steroids for a long time can induce glaucoma, bring about glaucoma, steroid-induced glaucoma, and history of trauma, surgeries, multiple surgeries. These are all other risk factors for secondary glaucomas. Okay.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ma'am, so when we were speaking about glaucoma, ma'am, so yes, to move on to the next one, what do you think are the misconceptions that people commonly have, ma'am, about glaucoma? So do you think people regularly visit an ophthalmologist for eye checkups, or if they have any glaucoma-related symptoms, what are the points do you think that will prevent them from approaching a doctor, ma'am? Like any fear factor they have on meeting the ophthalmologist?
Yeah, more than the fear, patients are generally indifferent, I would say. When they have the presbyopia beyond 40 years, all patients have difficulty in reading. So normal and hypermetropic patients have reading difficulty at 40 or even earlier. Beyond 35 itself, they start having difficulty in reading. What they generally do is they go to an optician, just have their near vision checked, they just get some near vision glasses and start using. Instead of having a comprehensive eye checkup, they just have opticians making glasses for them. And this is a big mistake, because when they don't go for a routine checkup and they just get opticals from opticians, they are going to miss out on having a comprehensive eye checkup. So I told you the primary open angle glaucoma is generally picked up only if a routine checkup is done, routine IOP checkup or fundus examination is done, only then it's going to be picked up. So it's very, very important that comprehensive eye checkup be done for patients beyond the age of 40 years, and when there is a family history, even beyond the age of 35 years, because they will have tendency to develop early glaucoma even much earlier. So these patients, talking about fear, many of them, they think, oh, if I get diagnosed with some eye disease or glaucoma, I may have to keep using medicines. I may have to keep going to doctors. I may have to spend a lot. So these are all misconceptions that patients can have, thinking if I don't have any symptoms, why should I go and unnecessarily have tests and get myself diagnosed with some fearful disease. So all these are misconceptions, because after many years, when they come with an advanced damage, it becomes very difficult to reverse the damage done. So we'll have to create awareness. So awareness is very, very important. Creating awareness among general public for a routine eye checkup to pick up glaucoma at an early stage is very important.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Does that answer your question, Karthik? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It did answer my question, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, as you said, so many people are lacking awareness, ma'am. Exactly as you
Yes.
say, they have many misconceptions in their mind, and so the entire what do we call it exactly? The aim of
Yeah.
this awareness week is to create awareness on glaucoma,
Yes.
to rip off the misconceptions
Yeah.
they have. So thank you so much for that,
Exactly.
ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, so the next question, as you
Yeah.
mentioned in the previous question, you said that glaucoma is the silent thief of vision.
Yeah.
So, how serious is glaucoma as a condition? So, when we leave it untreated, as you say, many people show symptoms and many don't show symptoms, ma'am. So,
Yeah.
what happens if the person is not treating glaucoma on time?
Okay. So I will talk about the types of glaucoma before I go on to this, because it's very important to know the types of glaucoma. I already made mention of the types. The gross types are the primary and secondary glaucomas. The primary glaucomas again can be open angle or narrow angle. The secondary glaucomas also have open angle and narrow angle types. We also have the congenital and the developmental glaucomas. So these are all minority types. The primary glaucomas are the majority, and of that, the primary open angle type is the majority. Okay, so primary open angle and primary narrow angle. You were asking about how important it is to, what was your question? Can you just repeat your question?
How important is it to diagnose glaucoma at early stage, ma'am? What
Exactly.
if it is untreated?
See, the narrow angle or the angle closure glaucoma is very symptomatic. Patients will themselves come to you with eye pain, headache. With one attack or two attacks, they are going to be with you. And you can, if they are not very late, you can save the eye. You can immediately give a laser treatment and you can save the eye. And sometimes a single laser treatment itself can be curative to these patients to have to save their sight. And also their pressures come down with that, and they don't even know, they don't even need sometimes drops. But the primary open angle glaucoma type is very dangerous because it is silent. Patients will not even come to us with any symptoms. Only on routine examination, when they come for some refraction or some other problems, headache or other problems, we happen to pick up glaucoma. So it's very, very important that these patients are alerted about the findings that they have. And if it's an early glaucoma, we can always do the complete workup, show them the OCT scan picture that they have an early damage, and this can be arrested. Also, the field damage can be shown. The patients can be educated, and by treating these patients on time, we can prevent further progression of glaucoma to the more advanced stages. Likewise, when there is a trauma, when there is a cataract, when it ripens, when it becomes one eye cataract, many patients tend to just neglect it. Becomes hypermature cataract, hypermature Morgagnin cataract, and it causes an angle closure attack because of the bulging lens. Angle gets blocked. Sometimes the cataractous lens, because the capsule ruptures, phacolytic glaucoma, the lens ruptures because it has become very cataractous, ripe, and cataract can ripen and cause secondary glaucomas. So that's what I'm trying to say. So these are all, when many patients with one eye, they will be seeing, the other eye will have a phacolytic or a phacomorphic glaucoma. They come with at the stage when they have eye pain, headache, or red eye, then we pick up glaucoma. So it's very important that patients are educated about the silent variety. The silent variety is the most dangerous one. And that's the majority.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very elaborate explanation about how we have to intervene with it. Ma'am, so what are the tests and what are the investigations that are available, ma'am, for testing for glaucoma in a patient?
Yes. So I kept on talking about comprehensive eye checkup. So when patients come to hospital, eye hospital, comprehensive eye checkup can definitely pick up glaucoma in 99.9% of cases, because we'll have to, when they come, we generally do the vision recording. Then before we go on to dilatation, we also see them on slit lamp. The pressure is checked. Non-contact tonometers are available now to check the pressure. These are screening tonometers. So when the pressure is raised in non-contact tonometer, we repeat several times, and consistent high pressures indicate that they need to go for glaucoma workup. So we do applanation tension, applanation tonometer pressure recording, which is the gold standard. Then we also have to do the pachymetry, the corneal thickness measurement, and do the adjusted pressure. So the adjusted pressure is actually important to see how high the pressure is actually in that particular patient. And then on slit lamp, we see whether the chamber is shallow or normal. If the chamber appears very shallow, we should not dilate without doing gonioscopy. Gonioscopy is seeing the angle. So we see the angle to, there is a grading for the angle. The angle can be 4 grades, grade 3, grade 2, grade 1. Grade 2 and 1 are occludable angles. And when we see very narrow angles or occludable angles, we'll have to tell the patient that before dilatation, they need a peripheral laser iridotomy, YOG peripheral laser iridotomy, because if we dilate these patients, they will go into angle closure attack. So it's important that we do the gonioscopy for these patients, make sure they have their angles are okay before we dilate, or do a peripheral iridotomy and then dilate. If patient has already had an angle closure attack in one eye, the other eye is at very high risk, and this eye also needs to have an angle an iridotomy before we do a dilated examination. In all other patients, after we do slit lamp examination, we dilate the patients and we see the fundus, optic nerve head. The fundus has got the optic nerve head seen directly through 90D exam, 90 diopter lens examination, or even other ophthalmoscopes. Direct ophthalmoscope, indirect ophthalmoscopes are all available, but the 90 diopter examination with the slit lamp gives a stereoscopic appearance of the lens. It shows how deep the cup is, how big the cup is, the depth is exactly perceived, three-dimensional appearance of the cup and the disc, and we are able to find out how much of glaucomatous damage is there. And if we see a cup disc ratio of more than 0.3, so normally it is 0.3, out of 10 parts, 3 parts is the cup. The disc is 10 parts, then 3 parts is the cup. If it is 4 parts or 5 parts, it means the cup is increasing. There is increased cupping, and cup disc ratio is increased to 0.4 or 0.5. And this indicates that we have to do further evaluation of the optic nerve head. There is also retinal nerve fiber layer damage seen in some parts of the retina. With more experience, we can pick up the nerve fiber layers being damaged. And when we do field test for these patients, after a day or two, we have to do fields, because once we dilate, we cannot do fields. We can do OCT, optical coherence tomography, wherein anatomically the amount of damage in the optic nerve head is shown, 1 quadrant, 2 quadrant, 3 quadrant, how much damage is there is shown by the OCT. So OCT helps in early pickup of glaucoma. And when we combine it with Humphrey field testing, which is a physiological test, this is an anatomical pickup, and field test is a physiological, it's a subjective test. This is an objective test. OCT is an objective testing and field is a subjective testing. Patient has to cooperate for the field test. So patients who are very sick and very young, children and all, it's very difficult to do fields. If their mental IQ is not so good, fields cannot be done, only OCT can be done. So fields, if patients are able to do the fields and vision is at least more than 6 by 60, then we can do the fields and pick up the amount of field damage. So the initial field damage will be like peripheral field defect, an arcuate defect, then the double arcuate defect, then the double arcuate will fuse to form a tubular vision. So this is a very specific glaucomatous field damage pattern, which we will see in patients. And finally, when all these are put together, we can assess whether patient has got glaucoma, and then whether patient, these Humphrey field analyzer or the computerized field testing and OCT also help us in following up the patients. So every 3 to 6 months, depending on the severity of damage, we give the follow-up for the patients. And when we follow up and repeat these tests, we know whether the glaucoma is progressing in spite of medical treatment or laser treatment, and if patient needs any other further modality of treatment. So for follow-up, it is very useful, these tests. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a very elaborate explanation, ma'am. Thank you so much for making us understand on what methods for screening. So now we've spoken about who are more prone for glaucoma. We've spoken about what is glaucoma, its pathogenesis, types. We've also spoken like how to actually go about with investigations. So next, ma'am. So how do we treat it, ma'am? Like from your explanation, the previous questions, we have understood that if we intervene in a patient at early stages of the disease, it can be cured.
Yeah, treatment of glaucoma you want. Yeah. So treatment of glaucoma initial phase is just medical. Only eye drops are needed to keep the pressures under control. So there are earlier days, there used to be only 1 or 2 medications and they used to produce a lot of side effects and all. Now we have a big gamut of eye drops available in the market for glaucoma, and generally we start with 1 glaucoma drops or a combination of 1 or 2 drops, and then we go on to adding a 3rd drop. If 3 or more, 3 and 4 medical, 3 and 4 drops are added, and there are 4 groups, general groups of drops available. If all the 3 and 4 groups have been added, or if the patient is still not having the pressure under control, oral medications are available. Oral medications cannot be used endlessly. Oral medications, acetazolamide or oral glycerol, all can be used only for just preparing patients before laser or surgery, just to bring down the pressure and go on for treatment. So drops are the long-term treatment modalities that we have to follow. So patients have to use the drops regularly without stopping. Patients should not stop medications on their own, even if they have some side effects. For example, some of the medications in the initial phase will produce little congestion. Some drops which have preservative may cause little preservative toxicity, little dry eyes, and long-term usage can again bring in some of these problems. So these patients, they can see the doctor and change over the medication to the ones which they are able to tolerate, but should not stop the medications on their own, because And then again, they are, in spite of having been diagnosed of glaucoma, they are still going to have progressive damage. So the glaucoma medications I have prescribed to them should be properly followed, and patients should periodically have their intraocular pressure checked up. Depending on the severity of their problem, doctors will give the follow-up visits, and they have to definitely follow up and be meticulous about that. And in the narrow angle type, just the laser treatment can be curative in many patients. Some patients in secondary glaucomas, for example, the lens-induced glaucoma, secondary glaucomas, uveitic glaucomas, or glaucomas which happen secondary to trauma and all that, when we have to treat the primary cause. Some of the narrow angle glaucomas, after the cataract surgery, cataract removal itself will widen the angles and reduce the intraocular pressure to a certain extent, and this itself will have a beneficial effect for them. So mainly medical treatment. In narrow angle glaucoma, laser treatment, peripheral laser iridotomy. And if medical treatment, maximum tolerated medical treatment and laser treatment, there is also laser trabeculoplasty available for the primary open angle glaucoma, wherein the pores are made bigger with a different type of laser. So diode laser or selective laser trabeculoplasty, we call it. Selectively, the pores are opened up. But then if laser and medical treatment do not work and patient has raised pressure or patient has a progressive damage in their damage to their field, then we'll have to plan surgical treatment. Surgical treatment is trabeculectomy. That's the standard surgical procedure. Now there are non-penetrating trabecular procedures, surgical procedures which have come in, more advanced surgical procedures have come in. And there are also now tubes available in failed surgeries and all. Now very high risk groups where more scarring happens and the trabecular passage. The trabeculectomy is a procedure where there is a passage created subconjunctivally. A bleb is kept there below the conjunctiva. The drainage is created and fluid keeps draining through that passage. And if there is conjunctival scarring, this bleb is going to close up. So patients who have a high scarring risk, there are other higher treatment modalities available also. There are tubes available which are kept in place, and these prevent closing up of the trabeculectomy passages. Okay. So these are the treatment modalities.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so we've almost covered every topic in glaucoma. So we have a general question here, ma'am. So as in when we come across this COVID-19 pandemics, so everything, almost like all diseases we know, they can be prevented by maintaining proper hygiene. So on to this topic, we are speaking about eye. So what do you think is a common person's knowledge on maintaining a proper eye hygiene, ma'am? What do you think are the diseases which can be prevented if they maintain a proper hygiene for eye?
Exactly. Cleanliness is next to godliness, we say. Not just during pandemic, we in our eye hospital always tell patients and the staff members not to touch eyes, nose, mouth without washing hands. This is a general instruction given always, because hands carry germs, and when you meddle with your dirty hands, your eyes are going to catch up the infection. So you rub your eyes hard when there is a foreign body falling into the eye and you rub, you're going to damage your eye. You're also going to carry the infective germs from your hands into your eyes, and this is going to definitely cause infection to your eye. COVID-19 also spreads to eye. Conjunctivitis is one of the symptoms of COVID-19. So you can catch COVID-19 by rubbing your eyes. So eyes, nose, and mouth are the portal of entry for diseases. So generally, without washing hands, you should not meddle with dirty hands, your eyes, nose, and mouth. Very important. And washing hands, as you all know, and sanitizing hands are very, very important. All eye infections can be prevented if you do that. And for glaucoma, the hand hygiene is very important when you apply drops. See, glaucoma patients, generally they have to keep on using drops lifelong. So lifelong eye drops usage means they tend to become careless. Without washing hands, they go in and they start applying drops. What happens while applying drops, they can catch up other infections, conjunctivitis, viral conjunctivitis, or any bacterial conjunctivitis, all can be contracted by dirty hands. So washing hands before applying eye drops is very important. Even in glaucoma patients, glaucoma is not contagious, but then it runs in family, so it can come among family members. And glaucoma, what lifestyle modification you can do is keep the diabetes and hypertension under control, because hypertension also, they say, is a patients having hypertension, diabetes, glaucoma also has got a slightly increased percentage of occurrence. So keeping the diabetes, hypertension under control would help. And patients with glaucoma, if they do regular walking, it is definitely going to help improve the circulation to the optic nerve and reduce glaucomatous damage. And some of the yogic postures, yoga exercises, where there is a lot of head down posture, Valsalva's maneuver, they say, when there's a lot of pressure being pushed into the eye by, say, for example, Sirasasana. These very drastic postures can be avoided, should be avoided in glaucoma patients, known glaucoma patients, because they are going to slightly increase the pressure inside the eye and cause little more damage. So that's important. Okay. So otherwise, I think we should, there is not much of lifestyle modification that we can talk to patients about in glaucoma patients, especially hygiene is important in glaucoma patients when they apply drops.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yeah.
so I hope that we have come to the end of the session. Now it's time for the audience for their questions.
Yeah.
Ma'am, so one
Have
question.
some 10 or 15 minutes left. We can, yes, take up a lot of questions.
Yes, ma'am. So the first question they have asked is about ill effects of using contact lens, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So contact lens is a double-armed sword, I would say, because
Yes.
see, if you want to avoid glasses at an age when you are when you are doing, say, at an age when you go to college, in your teens, you would like to be glass free. So you're doing some performances, or you're in sports activities, or you are you're attending some functions, you would want to avoid glasses. So people wearing glasses, if they have to get rid of glasses, the only option available at that age, say less than 18 years, is contact lens. So contact lens is a wonderful device. It gives a very good field of vision. It is going to give a fantastic quality of vision, but then you have to be very careful. Again, hygiene is very, very important in contact lens uses. In the initial phase, when we teach them how to put it on, put off, we teach them all precautions. They follow very well. But as time goes by, they tend to become careless. They don't wash properly. They put on contact lens with dirty hands, or they don't use the solution. Solution gets over, they just use any water available, or tap water. Tap water contains acanthamoeba. That's very, very dangerous. And when they put on, if there's a minimal trivial corneal abrasion also. This acanthamoeba is going to cause acanthamoeba keratitis, which is very, very difficult to treat. So acanthamoeba keratitis in contact lens users is a very well-known entity. There are many publications on that. So contact lens users have to follow meticulous hygiene and follow hours of where the restrictions, 8 hours where is mostly the time recommended. Some contact lenses are extended wear, but still it's good to wear them minimum hours. Have pair of spectacles in hand. You can mix and wear. Contact lenses, you can say contact lenses should be worn like a pattu sari or a coat and suit. They should be worn when you go out, just a few hours. When you come back, you remove your coat suit. You don't keep wearing coat suit all the time, isn't it? So you can wear up to 8 hours maximum. Then when you get back, as soon as you get back, you remove and you switch over to your normal clothes. So the normal clothes are your spectacles, and the coat suit or the pattu blouse, pattu sari is your contact lens. So just stick to minimum hours of wear and stick to the expiry date. The monthly disposables should be used only for a month. They should not go beyond month. Some people use monthly disposable second month also and then come with an infection. You should never sleep with contact lenses. So these are all very important. And then beyond the age of 18 years, if you still want to be glass free and you don't like wearing spectacles, you have to follow up with your doctor, see if your power is stable and go for permanent correction, because permanent correction is a one-time procedure. You have to be careful during the time when we give the procedure, either LASIK laser or the implantable Collamer lenses. They are once the treatment is done and you take care, it is healed and it is fine then on. But if you are wearing contact lens, it is like walking on the rope every day. Every day you have to, one day you're careless, you're going to have a fall. You're going to have gross corneal infection. We have seen patients who come with very bad corneal infection. Sometimes even it leads to corneal scarring and corneal drop in vision, visual impairment. We even have to plan some other procedures like corneal transplantation. So I remember a young girl who had a very bad corneal scarring. We had to plan corneal transplantation. So it's good to just wear for minimum hours, minimum years of your life. And then if you still want to be glass free all your life, just go for permanent correction. Don't keep on wearing contact lenses for years together. Contact lenses are stopgap arrangement just for a few years. Say from 14, 15, 16 years, you want to go for glass free life. Up to 18 years, you can wear few years of your lifetime. After 18, 19, your power is stable. By 20 years, boys also will have a stable power. You can go for 20, 21, all boys will have stable power. By 18, 19, all girls will have stable power. 2 years, if your power is stable, you can go for permanent correction. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. I hope that has satisfied them. Ma'am, next question. There are so many questions they have asked.
Yeah.
So,
I think I will. Where is the chat?
ma'am, yeah, we will read out the questions, ma'am. So the next question is, one person has asked you to differentiate between papilledema and trachoma, ma'am. So how will we differentiate between both of them?
Papilledema and trachoma.
Yes, ma'am.
Papilledema is a condition where, due to raised intracranial pressure, both the optic nerve heads get swollen. So the cup gets obliterated. I said the normal cup disc ratio is 0.3, isn't it? There will be a small depression in the optic nerve head. That depression is gone and the disc starts swelling. The cup gets obliterated and it is a swollen disc. Like both sides you have a swollen disc. That's papilledema. Whereas trachoma is a totally different condition. It's a chlamydial infection caused by by a chlamydial organism, and it causes follicular conjunctivitis, severe conjunctival inflammation, dryness. It can lead to corneal scarring, corneal blindness. It can lead to scarring everywhere. It can cause symblepharon formation, very bad ocular surface disease. So this leads to again blindness. So papilledema is a condition which is life threatening, not just sight threatening, it's life threatening. You have to do you have to take scan scan of the MRI or CT scan of head and skull. So that will help us pick up any space occupying lesion, because that is the cause for papilledema. Whereas trachoma is an infection caused by a Chlamydia trachomatis. That's the organism causing the infection, and it leads to scarring, ocular surface disease, and corneal blindness. All right.
Ma'am, yes, sorry, I was interrupting, ma'am. Sorry. Actually, the to differentiate between papilledema and glaucoma, ma'am.
Glaucoma. Okay. Papilledema is different. I told you it's due to raised intracranial pressure, and glaucoma is a different condition. It is caused by primarily by raised. It's caused primarily by damage to optic nerve head. The risk factor being intracranial pressure rise. Either the secretion, the aqueous humor secretion is increased, or the outflow passage is blocked. So either of the two, you will have raised pressure causing build-up damage to the optic nerve head, optic neuropathy, glaucomatous optic neuropathy. The papilledema, long-term, if papilledema is long-standing, it can also lead to optic atrophy. So that's called secondary optic atrophy. So primary optic atrophy, secondary optic atrophy is there, and glaucomatous optic atrophy. There are three types of optic nerve damage, optic atrophies. One is glaucomatous optic atrophy, and post papilledema you can have an secondary optic atrophy.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, ma'am, the next question is, a student has asked, what is the gold standard test for glaucoma and cataract?
Okay, gold standard test is, I told you, measuring the pressure with Goldmann applanation tonometer. So it's a contact tonometer which doctors do. So many times in the OPD we use non-contact tonometer, but non-contact tonometer can be sometimes erroneous. So when we have a patient having raised pressure, we have to repeat and get consistent values, 3 or more consistent values, then only it is accurate. But generally Goldmann applanation tonometer, GAT we call it, that's the gold standard for glaucoma. And for cataract, gold standard, there is no such thing as gold standard. Cataract is picked up by slit lamp examination with proper dilatation, because when we dilate, we can see the entire lens. And cataractus changes in the periphery or in the posterior surface, posterior subcapsular cataracts or peripheral cortical cataracts can get missed out if we don't do a dilated examination. We have to dilate and see the entire lens properly by slit lamp. Torchlight examination can pick up to, torchlight examination is what is done in CAMS generally. It can pick up 80 to 90% of cases with cataract. Mature cataracts all can be easily picked up. But immature cataracts, posterior cortical cataracts, peripheral cataracts, posterior subcapsular or polar cataracts all can get missed out if we just do, if we don't use a slit lamp, proper dilatation and the slit lamp examination. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And there are so many questions, but due to shortage of time, we are completing the session with this question.
Yeah.
So this is about the symptoms of narrow angle glaucoma are somewhat similar to idiopathic cranial hypertension. So how do we differentiate between these two conditions in a patient?
Idiopathic?
intracranial hypertension, and
Okay, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. That is where papilledema. That's why I think that person asked about papilledema and glaucoma, because when patients have papilledema, they have headache, vomiting. See, in papilledema, they have a projectile vomiting. They don't have nausea at all. They have a projectile vomiting. Suddenly, patient will vomit in the center of the house or in the center of the hospital. So that's one important symptom of papilledema. And in glaucoma, angle closure glaucoma, there are other findings in the eye. See, in papilledema, eye will not be red. Patients will not have drop in vision. Patients will have normal sight, very little blurring. In a even advanced disc edema, they will have very little blurring of sight. Only when they have a chronic papilledema after several years, after several months or years, they start going into optic atrophy, then the vision drops. Otherwise, papilledema will have normal vision. Patient will only come for headache and vomiting on and off. Whereas in narrow angle glaucoma, patients have eye pain, redness, pupil sluggishly acting, mid-dilated fixed. Patients can have nausea, vomiting, and eye pain. Eye will look red. So that itself will show that patient has got angle closure glaucoma. All right.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. We apologize to the audience that not all of your questions were answered due to shortage of time. So, ma'am, so that's the end of the session. So we wholeheartedly thank you for this much informative session. And it was really an eye-opener to all of us, ma'am. Not just about glaucoma, but we spoke about so many other eye disorders. We spoke about eye hygiene and how can we prevent diseases. And then we also dealt with the misconceptions which people usually have. So I think this was really a broad spectrum session.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our request.
I should congratulate Professional Helps for creating such awareness programs, for holding and such awareness programs. Really congratulate you, and I thank you, Karthik, and Dr. Pavan, for taking the interest, and also I thank you for calling me to this wonderful session. Thank you. And just summarizing, I want to say that glaucoma is a silent thief of sight. Generally, we say it's a silent thief of sight, the primary open angle glaucoma, and people aged 40 years and beyond should have a comprehensive eye checkup, and early detection of glaucoma can prevent sight loss. What damage is done cannot be reversed. So we have to do comprehensive eye checkup in order to pick up glaucoma at an early stage and prevent irreversible damage. Okay, so thank you. I think.
Thank you, and thank you, the audience, for coming here. Please fill the feedback forms so that you get your certificates. And ma'am, thank you so much. All the audience have listened to your lecture, because usually an online lecture is something the person who speaks would feel monotonous. But then here, because of your explicit explanations, audience were able to easily connect with your explanations, because you gave all examples which were suiting with the real life. So they were easily able to connect with it. So they were also very eagerly participating in the lecture. So thank you so much to you and the audience, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I congratulate the audience, and I really appreciate their listening to this lecture. Thank you so much.